Why don't you come over?
And join the dark side.
Hey team, and thanks for joining me. My name is Brian, core design engineer with DV8, and we have a long form video for you guys today because we have a lot to talk about with the brand new dark side and the brand new Duality core inside of this new symmetrical ball. The Duality core, of course, is one of the cores that is built specifically with no thumb and two-handed bowlers in mind. The range of post-drilled numbers and the range of motion shapes that you can get out of this core after drilling is staggering for no-thumb bowlers. We're going to get to all the numbers and all the details about how to drill this core to maximize the potential for the motion shape you're looking for at the end of this video. I want to start by talking about the cover stock because there is so much to cover about this brand new core, and we'll put it all together at the end. So starting with the cover stock, we're going to talk about this brand new Inciter hybrid formula. This is actually the first time that you've seen this exact formulation, Inciter hybrid, on a DV8 ball. You'll remember the Inciter name from a number of pro performance balls in the DV8 lineup and high performance balls like the Verge series. The original blue and red Verge, the Verge Pearl, and the Damn Good Verge Pearl all got versions of this formula, but never in the hybrid format. Of course, you've seen some of the Inciter additives inside the HK22 base as well, but never before has it been the non-HK22 Inciter base with just the hybrid formulation. So this is going to be a relatively long and hard arcing cover formula. It's not going to be particularly sharp, but it has good medium response to friction, and that's going to pair really nicely with our medium RG and low differential Duality core that we've got in this new dark side. This is a perfect segue to talk about our new Duality core. Like the dualistic core in the Troublemaker series, the Duality core is built to either be an incredibly symmetrical, low flaring ball, or a high differential, high flaring, and incredibly asymmetric core, depending on where you put the fingers and you drill into it as a no-thumb bowler. But first, before we get into all the details about how to drill into this core, I want to walk you around some of the resources available to you as a DV8 fan by simply going to DV8bowling.com, going to the products drop-down menu. Under balls, you will find no-thumb resources. When you click on that, you're going to end up at the no-thumb resources landing page. You're going to have a blurb about the technology about these cores, and here's a perfect time to remind you guys that both the Troublemaker series and the new dark side also have a lightweight 12 and 13 pound core, not the exact same core shape, but a smaller volume version of this core that has the exact same patented no-thumb technology in it. That means young up-and-coming two-handed and no-thumb bowlers can take advantage of the exact same technology that's in the dark side in their lighter weight cores. But if you scroll a little further, you've got a number of resources, and I'm going to talk about these one by one. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to download the no-thumb dual angle converter tool. We're going to come back to that later because when we choose what layout to put on this ball, we're going to use this converter tool to make it as easy as possible to lay it out on the ball. Scrolling a little further, you've got both your asymmetric and your symmetric versions of your dot to center of grip distance guide. We're going to click and download the symmetric version of this guide because the dark side is a symmetrical ball before you drill into it. And last but not least, new to the DV8 no-thumb resources page, we've got a post-drill cores values table for you. If you click on this, it's going to download a PDF chart, and it has all three cores in the no thumb series listed in columns for you, and we're going to explore that table in just a minute when we walk through how to lay out your dark side. So now that we have all the resources we need, let's take a look at this core so we understand what technology we're working with when we decide on a layout. So undrilled, I mentioned before, this core is a 248 RG with an 036 total differential. That's on the low side of medium in terms of flare potential before you drill it. And it has three distinct sections. It has this knob on top, which when you drill into it can really reduce the height of the core and reduce the total differential. In section 2, it has this void space where it's just compound material, and when you drill into this area, the fingers effectively miss the inner core and you're left with a relatively neutral drilling layout that resembles very much what the ball was before you drilled into it in terms of numbers and motion shape. And then you've got the option to drill your fingers way right around the side of the ball, really far from the dot. In this case, you hit the core almost immediately. You're raising the total differential and raising the intermediate differential by drilling out the side of this core, making the aspect ratio relatively tall and skinny by removing material from the side of the core. And what that does is that's going to raise your flare potential at your hook potential tremendously, and it's going to give you intermediate differential for a shorter hook window, or in other words, a more abrupt change of direction when the ball encounters friction. So depending on what zone you choose to drill in this core, you're going to get very, very different flare potentials and very, very different motion shapes. So let's jump over to the dot to center of grip distance guide, and this is what's going to inform your decision about what layout to put on this ball. This dot to center of grip distance guide is broken into 5 potential layouts. We've got one in section 1, which is going to be flare reducing. If you put your fingers exactly 1.5 inches from the dot, that's going to be a control layout, which reduces the amount of flare potential. In section 2, where we have that bowl section or that void section where you're just drilling into compound of the core, we've got 2 layouts offered for you. If you want a slightly less aggressive layout, you can put the fingers exactly 2.5 inches from the dot to the center of grip. And what that's going to do is give you a smooth benchmark motion with just a little less flare potential than the ball originally had. If you want to go a little stronger but still be in that benchmark range and retain most of the properties of the ball before you drilled into it, then you can pick 3.5 inches dot to center of grip. This is going to add just a little more flare potential because the fingers are starting to catch just a little bit of the side of the core, but generally speaking, this is going to be a very mid-range benchmark option for a lot of player styles, and this has been the most versatile dot to center of grip distance for the widest range of players for the widest range of conditions. Now, if you want to take this ball and make it stronger, like you're a speed dominant player, or you just want a ball that you can hook in fresher oil from deeper, then you're going to look at these last 2 options. If you put the fingers exactly 4.5 inches from the dot, then you're going to get more differential and more asymmetry by drilling into the side of that core. You're going to increase the intermediate differential, which means that you're going to get a shorter hook window, more hook immediately when the ball encounters friction, which means that this ball is good for getting in and opening up the lanes before they're completely broken down. And if you're a speed dominant player or you're looking for a ball for much heavier oil conditions, then this last layout is for you. If you put the fingers really far around the side of the core at 5.5 inches from the dot, then you're going to absolutely clobber the side of the core as soon as you start drilling into it. The core is so close to the shell that as soon as the bit is all the way through the cover stock material, the tip of the bit is already touching the inner core. That's how close it is. You're skinnying up that core, making it very tall and very asymmetric. What that does, of course, is give you strong mid-lane motion with maximum flare potential. And all of this, of course, is relative to the starting numbers of the core. So this duality core inside the dark side, starting with lower differential numbers, is never going to flare as much with the exact same layout as a troublemaker core, for example. But relative to the starting numbers, you can change this thing a whole lot. And we're going to look very briefly at the post-drilled numbers. You can pause this, take a look at the chart, or go to the resources page at DV8 Bowling and take a deeper dive into this chart. But it has all 3 of our cores on it. It's got your unholy core that was in the Heckler, that is asymmetric. It's got your troublemaker series core, that is the dualistic core that was in all 3 of the troublemaker balls. And it's got your brand new duality core that's in this dark side. This last column contains all your numbers. You'll notice if you pick the weakest layout, 1.5 dot to center of grip, this thing only has a 26 total differential, which is very, very tight flare spacing, not very much flare potential at all, which means a very, very controlled motion overall. Very, very little intermediate differential. This is very much a symmetrical ball. Jumping to the 3.5 inch dot to center of grip distance, this is going to be 0.38 after drilling in total differential. That means that this thing is going to be still relatively medium to medium light flare potential. This isn't going to flare a whole lot, but 008 is creeping toward asymmetric, still technically in the symmetrical category of ball motion, but that 008 intermediate differential is going to give you a little boost of intermediate differential relative to the 0 that was in the undrilled ball. And 038 is only a couple points higher than the undrilled 036 total differential. So this is what's considered a strong benchmark motion with only slightly boosted numbers, but mostly you're hitting compound in this finger orientation, so you're not changing the core a whole lot. And skipping to the highest, strongest layout, the 5.5-inch dot to center of grip distance for your fingers is going to result in a slightly lower RG, but more than that, look at how the numbers have ballooned. 051 in total differential is squarely in the high flare potential range, and 018 in intermediate differential, we have more than double the amount of intermediate differential that was in the 3.5-inch dot to center of grip distance layout, which means that this hook window is shortening up dramatically, and the response to friction of this ball is going to be quite a bit earlier and exceptionally more aggressive. So the range of numbers for this ball goes from 26 total differential to 51 total differential, and the range of intermediate differential numbers of this ball goes from 002, effectively nothing, all the way up to 18, which is squarely in the asymmetric category of ball motion. A huge range, which really highlights the importance of picking the ball motion that you want from the dot to center of grip distance guide and using the numbers to be your guide for how much flare potential you want. When we've considered all this information and we've decided on what dot to center of grip distance to pick, then we can put it all together with the layout converter. So I'm going to jump over here. We downloaded this earlier and it opens as an Excel spreadsheet. It opens and works best for us on a desktop in Excel, but if you use another spreadsheet or if you open it on your phone or tablet, it should work just as well. We've only had some minor formatting issues, mostly with the display, not with the calculation. So if you have any trouble with this spreadsheet on whatever platform that you're running it on, feel free to reach out to me here on YouTube or on Facebook at Bowling Buckosh, and I'll be happy to work through some of those issues with you. But for the most part, it's been really easy for us. This opens up with gold inputs and white outputs. So all you're worrying about is inputting the boxes that are in gold, and it walks you through it step by step. So just start at the top of the sheet and work your way down. First, we're going to input the bowler's PAP, and it's broken into horizontal and vertical coordinates. Just a quick reminder, of course, the center of grip for a no-thumb bowler is going to be the bridge center. So keep that in mind when you measure your bowler's PAP. So for example, we're just going to use a generic 5 over horizontal coordinate, and just for demonstration purposes, we'll use a negative vertical coordinate. In this case, we're going to do 5 over and 1 down. So in the vertical coordinate box, we're just going to put -1. Now we have an option in the ball layout category to pick asymmetrical or symmetrical. If you're laying out a heckler or any asymmetrical ball, you have the option to input the drilling angle first. However, when you pick symmetrical from the drop-down menu, it's going to black that section out. The drilling angle is picked for you in our symmetrical layout system, and it's built to point the CG at the center of grip. So you might find some very high drilling angles in the range of 80 all the way up to maybe 140 or more depending on your PAP, and it should point the CG right at the center of grip for you. That's exactly how we designed it, and that's how we want it laid out for you. The next option is going to be the pin to PAP. What we recommend is picking your favorite pin to PAP position to pair with the dot to center of grip distance of your choice. That's because the dot to center of grip has such an impact on the amount of flare potential and the motion shape of the ball that we recommend picking a benchmark PAP and letting the finger location do the work for you. I'm going to pick 5 because that's been working for most pro players and most no-thumb bowlers across the widest range of patterns. And finally, this is our only new component in the system. This is the dot to center of grip or pin to center of grip distance. I'm using dot and pin interchangeably here, of course, depending on the technology of the ball that you've got. Remember, the lowest distances, 1, 1.5, 2 are going to be lower flaring. The highest distances, 5, 5.5, all the way up to 6 are going to be the highest flaring. And the ones in the middle are going to be very neutral layouts, which are very reminiscent of the undrilled ball. So we're going to pick a neutral layout here of 3.5 dot to center of grip. What you've got in the next section are just checks for you. They've already been pre-calculated. The first thing is the center of grip to the PAP distance. All that is the straight line distance that makes the triangle from the PAP directly to the center of grip. So we broke it into horizontal and vertical coordinates at the top. The third leg of that triangle is simply the COG to PAP. That's calculated for you when you input your PAP. The box right below that is the layout sum. The layout sum is 8.5 in this case because it is the sum of the pin to PAP, we picked 5, and the pin to COG. In this case, we picked 3.5. 5 plus 3.5 is 8.5, so that is the total sum. This is just a check to make sure that the layout is applicable to the ball. If the sum, 8.5 in this case, is greater than the COG to PAP distance, 5 1/8 in this case, then we've got no problems. This layout is valid. There are some cases where the two distances that you've selected, the pin to PAP distance and the pin to center of grip distance, are simply too short to connect to each other and the layout literally isn't possible to draw on the ball. In that case, you'll end up with an error and the numbers at the bottom in the dual angle boxes won't display. In that case, just increase your dot to center of grip distance or your pin to PAP distance until the layout is valid and away you go. And at the bottom, finally, what we're here for is the dual angle conversion that you're going to apply directly to the ball. It's read just like dual angles because it is dual angles. In this case, a bowler with a 5 over by 1 down PAP is going to have an 80 by 5 by 33 dual angle layout. In other words, an 80-degree drilling angle, a 5-inch pin to PAP distance, and a 33-degree VAL angle. These output dual angles can get very specific, right down to 1 degree. You notice 33 in this layout. That'll ensure that you get the exact pin to center of grip distance that you were aiming to get. And as a check at the end, when you apply your dual angles to the ball and then you back out the bowler's PAP, you can always put the prosect on the ball and double check that the center of grip is exactly the distance from the PAP, in this case 3.5 inches, that you expect it to be. Well, this has been a long video, but a very informative one. I hope you learned everything that there is to know about the DV8 dark side, how to lay it out, how to pick the dot to center of grip distance that gets you the flare potential that you want and the motion shape that you're expecting. Of course, you can match this to the player's style, or you can drill multiple of them and get very drastically different shapes depending on the dot to center of grip distance that you select. Our no thumb technology allows all of the cores in the no thumb series to get the widest range of possible drilling options for no thumb bowlers. We recommend that you drill your fingers 3 inches deep. That maximizes how much core material that you're removing, but it doesn't get so deep that the fingers have intersection issues or the RG gets too high in the bowling ball. So we have found 3 inches to be the sweet spot, and that is what we're recommending as the distance that you drill your fingers when you're laying out these bowling balls. If you have any questions about the no thumb converter, the Duality core, any of the cores in the no thumb series of cores by DV8, or layout questions for your arsenal in general as a no thumb bowler, feel free to reach out to me at Bowling Buckosh on Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions, drop a comment below. If you are excited about the dark side, I'm excited to hear your feedback. The feedback in the testing for the videos, the staff players, and the early development has been really good for this bowling ball, so I'm very excited for you guys to get it in your hands. A hybrid bowling ball with a smoother reaction and lower differential is going to be a two-handed bowler's dream, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. I'll see you guys on the next video.